Hello classmates, Justin Berger here. So I'm going to be talking about the Garmin G430 for our last presentation here on GPSs. What's cool with the Garmin G430 is it gives you a lot of the IFR capabilities and visuals that the G1000 does, but it's a lot cheaper initially as well as to maintain. So the G430 is a great low-cost alternative to the Garmin G1000. It'll connect to pretty much any autopilot system that'll accept roll commands. It can be IFR rated for GPS systems, and just like your PFD or any other GPS, it will include the COM Radio 1 as well as Navigation Radio 1 or Receiver 1 for that unit. Some features that you get with the G430 is that it has a full map display, which will include waypoints, airspace, terrain, traffic if it's equipped. You're able to load airways routes. You can do direct routing with that same old direct to button. You can include IFR procedures like departures, arrivals, approaches. You can then follow the IFR routing with autopilot. What's cool is just like with the G1000 is it is color-coded for terrain and map features, so you're still going to see those magenta or blue airports. You're going to see those green lines for the airspace. You're going to see the yellow or red terrain depending on how far it is below you. You can connect it to ADS-B for additional features, and it is WAS, so the Wide Area Augmentation System. It is capable of WAS, which gives you those tighter standards for better approaches. On that next slide, you can see 4 different pictures of the G430 where you can get a procedure in here. You can see the procedure turn, and then the magenta field's the one you're flying before your holding pattern. Down below that, you have the different colors for terrain. And to the top right, you can see the airspace with the magenta airports, and then the green airspace. And the bottom right is when you're on a, you can see it's direct to KBOS, Kilo Bravo Oscar Sierra, and you can see your distance there, your track, desired track, your bearing, how fast you're going, how much time it should take, and then as well as how far off course you are. So you can see your en route where it's 5 nautical miles on each side of the scale, and it'll maintain that and tell you where you're at, just like your standard CDI. So one thing that's cool with the G430 is it has alerts just like the G1000. It'll provide alerts to the pilot, such as airspace messages, letting you know you're in the airspace, you're leaving, you're approaching airspace. It'll do turn now commands, so it'll count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, turn now to this heading when you're getting onto your next stage of the flight plan. If you have traffic on there, it'll give you traffic alerts as well as terrain alerts. So it's pretty similar with the G1000 there. Some advantages of it. So an advantage with the G430 alongside a steam gauge aircraft would be that it gives pilots a visual aid. You're going from steam gauge where you may not have really a GPS on there, and so now you have, or if you do have GPS, you may not have an actual display. So what's cool with the 430 is you have a display here. And so you can actually get a little bit better situational awareness because you have a map there for you, so you're not stuck looking at your actual map. It's not like other lower cost, older options for GPS where there is no actual display. You maybe just get a couple lines of text that'll tell you what you're doing. This one actually gives you a map that paints a picture for you. An advantage over the G1000 with this is that the low cost of it. So the unit itself on eBay, I've found some for like $3,000. With full install from shops, it could go anywhere from $4,000 up to like $15,000 for the unit installed. Whereas the G1000, you're looking at like $250,000. And so if you're flying on a budget, it can really give you a good GPS for a low cost. And then it's less units to replace, so there's not a whole bunch of line replaceable units, LRUs, associated with the G430. So if something breaks, you're just looking at that main component rather than a whole bunch of other things that it could be. And you still have to take it to a Garmin shop that can handle it, but generally it's going to be less expensive to repair than the G1000. So the disadvantages when associated with a steam gauge aircraft is that it can take your attention away from your instruments. So my point with this is that it does require a new learning curve. And if you've never flown with a GPS, or you've never flown with the G430, just like with the G1000, you want to get up there with an instructor. You want to learn what you're doing, how to use it, and what it can do for you, because it really will greatly reduce your workload, and it'll make it easier for you to stay ahead of the aircraft. But if it's something that you're just jumping in to go try while you're alone on a cross country, that could actually set you behind the aircraft because you don't know how to operate it. And so that's something you just want to be familiar with. Whereas the disadvantage compared to the G1000 is it does have less functions, and it's a small screen. So if you're used to flying in the G1000, you have the PFD and the MFD. They each can do their own thing while they're still connected to each other. And you have that giant map on the right side, and you have all your instruments on the left side. Whereas with this, you're still using all your steam gauge instruments, and so it's kind of a new scan. It's a different scan from the G1000. It's a different scan from the steam gauge aircraft, and so it just takes a new learning curve. And if you are used to the G1000, there are a few features that the G1000 offers, whereas the G430 will not. So for example, my school that I'm with, we have 2 aircraft that are G1000 aircraft, and then the rest of our fleet is all steam gauge, and a few of them have the G430s on there, which does make flying quite a bit more convenient, especially for those cross-country trips. And then the last picture here, you can see a standard steam gauge aircraft with the top GPS as the Garmin G430, and it really doesn't take up a lot of room. It's easy to use, and can really help out a pilot if you know what you're doing. And that last page, or that last slide here, is my reference for the pilot guide and reference book for the G430, and that's where I got most of my information. So thank you for listening, and I hope you have a great day.